What's up? It's your boy Gimpzilla coming at you with another gaming strategy video. This week we are doing a Dungeon Master Tactics for the Forge of Fury from Tales of the Yawning Portal. This video has spoiler warnings ahead and is best reviewed after reading the module at least once over. With that in mind, guys, it will start with a quick numeric rating from myself, followed by three primary sections. The first being my player experience, the second going to be the quest hooks and storylines that you're likely to experience within the module. And then third and finally will be a section of room highlights, spotlighting specific sections and encounters that will really help this dungeon come to life. So with that in mind, guys, please make sure you leave a thumbs up on the video and also a subscription. I am on the way to 1,000 subscribers, and every little piece of support very much does help me out. So I do rate Forge of Fury very positively. I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I would say that it is easy enough to get the players into the dungeon. The dungeon itself provides an extremely large open sandbox layout where players have the freedom to navigate and explore as they choose. A positive feature there. And then moving forward, extremely challenging combat within this module, so be prepared for possibly some player kills. And then finally, the storyline of this module I feel is extremely strong. It provides you with a plethora of background information that really can help you mold your world and help the NPCs and characters come to life. So now, specifically, the hooks for the dungeon were quite easy for my players to pick up. Simply using the orcs and the missing weapons is enough to get most players going. Just kind of the hint and illusion that there may be some type of legendary artifact at the end of this route. It's fairly simple to get your players inside, which is where all the magic happens. So it gets a thumbs up on the hooking player section. The sandbox dungeon, like as far as my personal experience with the dungeon layout, it's quite extensive. So what I pulled up here on the screen in front of you are all of the various maps for this module, and then circled in red are all of the different entryways and exit ways to different sections of the module. So as you can see, there's dozens of little like cave networks, running rivers. At one point, players can fall from the first level all the way down to the bottom. There's just a lot of sandbox exploration. So as a dungeon master, I felt I needed to prepare a little bit further ahead than I normally do with this module, because of the fact that it's so open and players have this freedom and they can really make a left turn that you're just not expecting at that time. Up next would be the challenging combat. This dungeon, if you do a quick Google search, everyone is going to essentially play up the roper, which again is an extremely deadly combat. But so is eight Durgar in the forgery area. So is a young black dragon lurking in the murky swamps below, and then so are dozens of orcs. So yeah, just the combat itself is extremely challenging. So in my personal experience, I would recommend for dungeon masters to at least kind of set their throttle where they want it to be beforehand, because just running the module as is, you're definitely, I would say, probably in line for at least a single player kill. And then finally, in my personal experience, is telling the story. And this module, I would start this section by just saying the storyline is so robust and extensive and intricate that it has a lot of great details, and it tells a very good story. I very much like the story being told by Forge of Fury. Now, the issue I had in my experience is that this module suffers from the old writing proverb of show don't tell. Essentially, none of the encounters or the rooms really build up and help tell the story. It gives you a lore dump at one section where it basically just puts this entire awesome story and catalog of story hooks into one single notebook. Just going into the module, possibly a little bit of preparation on specifically what story you want to tell, and then looking at some specific rooms and trying to craft some ways that you can tell this story that's not just here's a journal, this is what happened, because I find most players get a little disengaged with that type of delivery. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and switch gears over to the story hooks and quest lines. These are the inputs and outputs of your dungeon, guys. So hooks are what are going to draw your players into the storyline, and then your storyline are what you're going to exit out of the dungeon with, and can use that for future adventures moving forward. So the most obvious story hook that's presented in the modules, and the one that I feel was the strongest for my players, was the Dwarven weapons. Essentially, the module as written advises you to state that these weapons have been showing up from an ancient Dwarven smith by the name of Durgadin, and nobody has seen this dwarf smith's sigil for many years. So the fact that these weapons are starting to repopulate is a huge question mark in the ethos. And you're going to have blacksmiths, you're going to have mayors, you're going to have people that are essentially wanting information on where these weapons coming from, possibly hints at legendary artifacts that might be able to be attained by this Dwarven Smith. So that's the main hook, is we need to figure out where these are coming from. We need to figure out if Durgadin's alive. If he is alive, like, we're going to get some awesome weapons. Besides that, the module presents you with 2 additional hooks, which is essentially just saying that the orcs have taken over the compound and they need to be dealt with, which I think is perfectly acceptable for a low-level adventure like this, starting at level 3. Likewise, the map is essentially similar to the orcs. Players locate a map in any prior dungeon or adventure, and the map basically points to an ancient treasure that is found deep within this old Dwarven complex. So again, the orcs in the map, I feel, are just simple, straight, vanilla story hooks, just to get your players in there. The Dwarven weapons are that's your lead in to the greater picture of this dungeon. So again, highly recommend using the Dwarven weapons. It's going to allow you more opportunities to explain the deeper story within this dungeon. But if you're looking for something quick, simple, easy, orcs and maps, simple hooks. Moving over into the actual storylines themselves. These are essentially just the endings that I could feasibly see coming out of this dungeon. And I'm going to start with orcs and troglodytes. Again, as written, there's really nothing to be said here. It's just two NPC tribes that need to be eradicated. Second is the obvious story hook of finding the weapons, right? With the weapons, it's pretty straightforward. Get into the forgery, find the fact that the Dwergar are essentially manufacturing the weapons themselves, and it's not in fact Durgadin. These are simply knockoff weapons. And then the big climax there would be in the actual foundry and the roleplay discussions that circle around the Durgar dwarves, and understanding their intentions. And again, books as written, there's no payoff for the Dwergar. It doesn't necessarily say why they started manufacturing these weapons again, other than the fact that general Grey Dwarf lore is that, you know, they're evil and they like crafting and they like just mass producing items for wealth, basically. So that's essentially their main drive, is that the forge was here, and you know, they were able to take it over and start producing these items for personal wealth and storage. So, and then the third and final storyline is finding the treasure, right? The storyline here is that an ancient Dwarven citadel was ransacked, and normally when there's a massive citadel, it comes with it massive treasure, which is located on the very, very bottom level of this module, guarded by a black dragon. So those are essentially your ending points. Is you're either going to be finding the weapons and reporting the reporting back to the blacksmith or whoever sent you that these weapons are a farce, and being basically made by lesser craftsmen than Durgadin. And then the other major storyline is essentially getting all the way down to the treasure, more for personal gain. Hey, let's get this treasure out and extracted. So the storylines are not as simple as other modules, so I did draw up this matrix of information. So let's look at the matrix here, and kind of explain better why the storyline is so hard to get out to your players, right? And I think that this kind of short example is really going to help illustrate it. So first layer, when you first enter the dungeon, what do you experience? You experience the orcs. Are they hostile? Absolutely. They're going to try and kill you. That's all they know. And then if you are to coerce one of these guys and get information from them, they're only going to be able to provide information on the first floor. They're going to know their hunting schedule. They're going to know where the King Ulfi is. They're going to know, like, basically just the orc domain is all that they're going to be aware of. Up next, you're going to go to the Dwergar, who are definitely written as an evil race. They're going to be sitting and hiding and waiting for the party, and if they are to be snuck up on, then they're essentially going to become instantly hostile. So again, it's going to be another situation of coercing or restraining or some type of outside force. These Dwergar are not willing to just give information up, and then even the information that they know, very little. They know that there's a dragon downstairs. They know that the hallways to the north of them are haunted, and they essentially don't check or don't look at these ghost locations. And then third, they know that they're making the weapons. They know that they're not just ancient legendary artifacts. It's just simply the Dwergar that are making it. And then up next is Arundel, the crazed dwarf wizard who failed to protect his colony many moons ago, is essentially booby-trapping the dungeon to protect the treasure of his dwarven brethren down in the depths below. Now, module as written with Arundel says that he has been driven completely mad. It advises that the characters are going to experience some hostility, and that he's not going to essentially really have any information. That leaves the question, where does the module expect you to pick all of this information up? Where do they expect you to figure out, like, who is this ghost, right? The Dwergar know that there's a ghost there, but they don't know who the ghost is. So second is the treasure location, which is not depicted to the party at any other section, unless you use possibly the map hook. Two major story hooks that have essentially been left out, except for one tiny little section, and that's going to be Idala the succubus. This character in the module is extremely important. So if you want to run the dungeon as written, you essentially need to have your players experience the succubus. She found the diaries of Arundel, and she found the diaries of Durgadin, and essentially knows the entire history of this dungeon. She is so far removed from the module. Like, she is behind a party of hostile Dwergar. Furthermore, she's extended past a hostile ghost, so you have to essentially walk through the ghost, ignore the ghost, and continue exploring the area. And then the third thing that's going to prevent your players from even entering the room where the succubus is hidden, you meet 6 or 7 empty closets, basically. So it's basically a section of the module where you have a back barracks with 10 to 15 rooms. One room has a succubus in it, and players, essentially, if they don't check all 15, or if you don't basically get them close enough to Idala or move the succubus where you want her to be, there's a high probability that they're not even going to experience the succubus. So just be warned, module as written, the succubus has all of the information. The succubus is where the lore dump happens, that I mentioned prior in my player experience section. So you need to have your players experience the succubus if you want to execute essentially any story. Just to wrap this up here, just some additional information that's not presented to the players at all. The roper location is completely unknown. Players are just walking into it. There is a sturdy metal door that prevents people from entering the foundry from the glitter dome. Just simply like walking straight to the foundry, they have to find this key. And again, the key is never hinted at. The key is not easy to locate. It's downstairs past the roper in an old decrepit skeleton cell. And then there's also, again, a half dozen entrances and exits into this layer that are never presented to the party, just need to be found through exploration. So again, there's a lot of small intricacies within this dungeon that you need to be planning for. My recommendation more is pick a couple rooms or a couple encounters that you feel are going to help tell your story, and then really deliver those to the players. All right, perfect. And with that, let's dive into the highlight section, where I can give you a little more detail on exactly what I mean with a couple of these choice encounters. All right, and then starting this section off, I do just want to continue on the succubus and Idala, because again, I think that it is probably one of the most quintessential encounters within the entire dungeon. The succubus herself sits in this back corridor. So again, the succubus is a linchpin for so much of the storyline. So dungeon masters, you need to consider how you can incorporate this woman into the party. The book as written states that the succubus herself reads the lore and is waiting for characters to come down and seek the treasure. She knows the treasure's here, and as a succubus, she's simply waiting for tasty adventurers that she can prey on as they all make their way towards the mountain eventually. So again, a very cool origin story for the succubus, but you need to think of ways like, how can I even get this story delivered to my party members? Furthermore, if your party is going to be friendly towards the succubus, how are you going to be able to flip that switch and get that succubus kiss off, which is everybody's favorite encounter when dealing with a succubus? The book as written states that she's going to tell your party that there is a evil wizard downstairs and essentially try and split the party up, keeping one person with her to go through like the books and the lore, while the rest of the party works their way downstairs towards the wizard below. And essentially, you just need something to really implement that trust early with this character. Otherwise, she's likely to just be slain, and as a dungeon master, you're kind of left with question marks of, okay, how am I supposed to reveal all this story information at this point if my players just came in and hostilely like attacked this woman? You know, be ready for that as an outcome. And like I said, look for other opportunities throughout this dungeon to kind of get this storyline out to the players. The main goal here is essentially to split the party with information, saying, look, if you go tell the ghost this, it should work. You know, you stay back with me, help me look over these books. Oh, you're so helpful, like I could just kiss you. And then, there you go. You got your succubus kiss in there. So do everything in your power to make this encounter work. This is probably the most important roleplay encounter in the entire dungeon. So I just wanted to take a moment to step back and really communicate the urgency of the NPC and their role within the dungeon. All right, and I'm not going to focus too much on it, but while we are in the foundry, the ogre skeleton room is extremely challenging. Definitely kills off some players. Be aware of this encounter. This room does a good job of explaining my gripes within the dungeon. Right? It's leaving the player characters with more questions than answers. You know, why is there an animated orc? Like, who animated this orc? What are they protecting? Like, you know, it leaves the players with just too many questions, and it doesn't answer anything. Once characters get through this hard encounter, they'll go through the ghost, they'll meet the succubus, they'll get the storyline, they'll get the explanation. But a lot of characters are going to be, reading. They try and read into parts of the dungeon that are not meant to be read into, and then this room is kind of a great example of that. So just a quick highlight on this section. All right, and then finally, last encounter I would emphasize here in the Foundry. If you watch my videos at all, you know I love the mechanical trap. So just room 35 with the Dwarven statues. Essentially, if anybody were to check 2 of these false doors up in the top, axes are going to come down and chop them. So again, I just like a good mechanical trap. I'm always going to take the time to highlight those. All right, and then next in line, we are going to go back to the top in the beginning of the dungeon here. The introduction to this dungeon is basically just a war with orcs, and it climaxes with this rope bridge right here in section 2, where players are essentially forced to cross it, the secret doors being unrevealed to them at that point. And then as they start crossing this rope bridge, orcs are going to come out and start attempting to cut the ropes down. This is all triggered by some lookout sentries that as soon as the party kind of enters in, they're going to get a glimpse of these orcs essentially sprinting down as if about to send off the warning sign to his comrades. So players are going to be engaged and forced to track these orcs down immediately. Your goal here is get your players on the rope bridge as soon as possible, and then start the chaos. Start trying to cut ropes and have them plummet down to the depths below. I thought that was an interesting route in my dungeon. That's how I specifically ran this place. Was having my characters plummet down the rope bridge with very little options to proceed forward. The other thing that's going to prevent the player characters from really just pushing across the rope bridge and going on unobstructed is that goblin sentry will sound the alarm, and you can see that the module writes out these specific instructions around 1, 2, 3. If they are taking too long with killing like 1 or 2 orcs, well, how about 2 or 3 more, and then 2 or 3 more, and then 2 or 3 more, and it'll get to a point where players, they're either going to have the tools to dismantle these orcs at the time, or they, could very easily feel forced down into this hole. And onto a greater adventure. So again, remember the overarching story hooks of this module is the treasure and the weapons. So they might think that the orcs are manufacturing these weapons on the top level, but really shifting the environment from, oh, this is an orc compound, to, oh crap, I'm falling down a 200-foot hole and now I'm in like some murky dark cavern and like I don't know how to get out. That's a very cool environment switch. That the players are going to be kind of left on their toes, really wondering where to go at this point. Yeah, give your players something really to remember with this room. I think it's one of the better encounters within the entire module. So, all right, and then I don't have too many things to say about the Glitterham area here. I just want to highlight just a couple sections that I feel you can use to your advantage. So the first section in here is the Dwarf Crypt, and again, there's no real combats there, but it's a room that I feel was underutilized and might be a room that dungeon masters can place some nice lore pieces in to really hint that this place might be older than what was first expected, or maybe some origins. They do find a Durgadin weapon here. But again, it's going to leave them with more questions than answers with the module as written. So consider taking this room and seeing how you can implement some of your lore sections in there. And the last thing that I want to highlight on this floor here, and I could have done this within the Foundry as well, are the animated armors that are found throughout the dungeon. You have animated tables, animated rugs, animated armor, all of which enchanted by the ancient wizard Arundel to help protect this, help protect the Dwarven Foundry. after the fact, after it's been raided and ransacked by the orcs. So again, finding some sigil or inscription on these armors that are going to unite them all. It's building up all these questions, right? The players should be entering the foundry saying like, who put up this armor? Like, who's summoning the ghost skeletons? Like, why is this rug attacking me? Like, you really want to play up these counters, even though they are rather mundane from a combat perspective. You really want to play up the fact that like somebody was down here enchanting these items, somebody was doing something nefarious down here. You want your players questioning that, so that when they interact with the ghost or maybe the succubus and the succubus says they have answers, you want your players interested and engaged enough so that they're going to be willing to talk to these NPCs and extract the information that you want to give it to them. And then downstairs in the sinkhole, the main encounter down here is going to be the roper. These things are stalactite shaped creatures. They look like rocks just kind of protruding from the floor and ceiling. And then they have extremely large, long tentacles that extend about 40 feet in length that they use to grapple party members, drag them in, and then eat their corpse. The way to really make this roper come to life, my party really had no problems with it, and I would assume any party with a ranged caster or archer will really be able to overcome this encounter, and that's simply because the range of his tentacles doesn't go exactly where you want it to go. But any character worth their salt, right, is going to basically jump in, take a shot, and then use their movement to run back behind, completely negating these tentacles. Same thing for going north up into this room. You know, they'll hide in the room, they'll come out, they'll shoot, they'll come out, they'll shoot. So my recommendation for the roper, according to their character sheets, they are extremely stealthy. They have a +5 to their stealth, as they're basically just motionless rocks on the wall. And what that would imply to me is let your characters get comfortable in this room a little bit, right? They need to come up here and explore room 34 and the decrepit cell, because that has the key that will allow them into the foundry. So there are items that they need here. And what I would recommend is allow your players to become a little bit complacent in this room, right? Let them walk in, let them find the key. Maybe they come down here and poke their head in the river to kind of see where that might lead to. And then that's when you're going to spring your rope. Again, as soon as they understand how this guy works and that he's slow and immobile, basically, they're just going to be jumping in and out, bob and weaving, and you want to be able to grapple the paladin or something before the roper goes down. Yeah, just a really fun encounter. I think this was one of my favorite creatures that I discovered from pretty much the entire Tales of the Yawning Portal book. Again, I think it has good flavor. I like the autonomy of the creature itself and just hiding within the rocks. And then, you know, extremely deadly and under the right circumstances. All right, and then there's really only one encounter left that I'd like to speak about here, and that is the dragon down on the very, very, very bottom layer in the black lake of this dungeon. Just putting a dragon in front of a bunch of level 4s or even level 5s, it's a challenge, right? You can turn this dragon up to 11. The module encourages you to do it and provides you the tools to do so. So as the dragon catches wind of these creatures kind of jumping towards its lair, it's going to wake up and slink underneath the waters, and it's going to be swimming submerged underneath this lake. And the module as written basically says that this dragon only comes out of the water to breathe on the party and then goes back under. So talk about a chaotic fight. This thing is going to just basically be invisible to the party for most of the rounds. 100% a deadly encounter. It's the climax of the whole dungeon. It's supposed to be the big finish, the big finale. So again, play it like that, right? Play this dragon like an extremely deadly creature, and let your characters survive on their own wits and merit. So kind of emphasizes what I said earlier with, where do you want the throttle? Like, do you want this dragon to be unkillable? Because again, the module gives you the tools to basically make this guy invincible for the most part. or do you want a story and an encounter and an interaction that the players can overcome? In that case, just keep him out of water, flying around. It's still going to be a hard encounter, but he's at least manageable that way. With that in mind, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Please leave it a thumbs up and a subscription for more D&D content. And as always, guys, this is Gimpzilla, and I will see you all next time.